when I first got here last fall, someone suggested that we should participate in the college's Great Places to Work for, and it's a survey that's done by the Chronicle of Higher Education. I think they outsource it to a company to do it. And so we participated, and the interesting thing for me is that a lot of the findings that they discovered were consistent with conversations I'd had with various groups I'd met with, whether it was students, faculty, departments, or administrative departments. So the good thing is it was consistent information. And the other good thing is it gives us good things to celebrate, but also some very, very important things to work on. So I am delighted. I'm going to turn this over to Hunt because he has asked the group to come in and kind of explain our findings to us.
Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Hunt Bartine and fairly new here to NJCU. And I've been here, I guess, since July, although I did have a couple of emails that came before I actually started. So I consider it May 30th that I actually started. In any case, we're here to give the results of the Great Colleges to Work For survey. And we have Eileen Edmonds from Modern Think. Modern Think, again, as Sue was indicating, is the firm that coordinated the survey with the Chronicle. And they came for a special meeting that we held, special cabinet meeting with some other key department managers to review the results, in depth. And what we did is we decided at that meeting we really needed to get these results fully back, to the community. So the format of this meeting is going to be, we'll have Eileen going to give an overview, PowerPoint presentation of the survey results, and following that, we're going to be going into a list of questions that we solicited from all of you, and we'll respond to those. Actually, I'll respond on a couple. Sue may respond on a couple. We've got a couple of other representatives from senior management here, Bill Fellenberg and Al Ramey, who will also assist, along with Aaron Aska, who's here right now as well. And we'll go through those 11 questions that came up and explain some of the things we're doing already now to respond to some issues that came out in the survey, along with future plans that we plan to undertake to respond to some of the positives and the negatives, which there were some of, and Eileen will talk a little bit more about that. Now Eileen herself, again, as I mentioned, is from Modern Think. She's a managing partner. She has 3 degrees, a JD, MBA, and a BA from the University of Virginia. And I'm going to hand it off to her. We'll go from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Hunt. Good morning, everyone. Given today's weather, I really appreciate you being here because what a nice day for a picnic would it be. So my goal is to spend about 25 minutes giving you a broad overview of the survey findings. Essentially, we'll be spending some time on clear strengths that the data showed us, as well as some areas of concern. And I do want to pause and give a little bit of kudos senior administration's way, because frankly, this is truly a best practice to have an independent, neutral third party come back and provide you the unvarnished results. So as Hunt mentioned, we were back here, I was here in early September, so really not too long ago when you think how busy semester starts are. And you will be seeing essentially a subdivision of the deck that was actually showed to the president and her cabinet. So nothing doctored. We have truncated it because of the time constraint we have here, but you are hearing largely what the cabinet heard back in early September. So seriously, a shout out to the senior administrators in that not all colleges do this. And you will see that throughout the process, I've heard time and again how transparent senior leadership wants to be with the results. And I think you'll get that sense of transparency this morning. So again, we're going to do an introduction. We're going to look at kind of the strengths as well as the opportunities that we saw in the data. And as Hunt mentioned, we'll have time for Q&A, both advanced questions that have been submitted as well as time from questions from the floor. So we definitely encourage you to have your questions. And if you don't mind, given that we are allotting a fair amount of time at the end, if you could hold your questions to the end, we'd appreciate that. So just a little bit about Modern Think. We are a management consulting firm that specializes in helping organizations assess and then improve their workplace quality. It has been demonstrated time and time again that great workplaces have engaged employees who go above and beyond. They go the extra mile for their clients, whether they be students or patients or what have you. And that ultimately builds a very strong culture that helps you attract and retain very top talent. And that's kind of what our specialty is in. We have done a wide variety of best place to work programs from over 50 city, state, and regional best places to work programs. We've worked with AARP on best employers for workers over 40. We have also partnered with the Association of Legal Administrators on a workplace quality for law firms. And we're here today to talk about our Anchor program, which is Great Colleges to Work For. We co-founded this program in 2008 with the Chronicle of Higher Education, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And the goal was to gather much-needed HR metrics and benchmark data for higher ed, because in some estimations, higher ed could lag behind corporate peers as much as 15, even 20 years, some estimated. And so the program has grown by leaps and bounds, and we started out with 89 colleges in the inaugural year, and we're up to 300 colleges that participated last year, including this institution. And so you can, as you'll see, you will have the benefit of not only seeing your scores, but seeing your scores next to comparators. Comparators both who are best in their size category, as well as those from your Carnegie class. So if you remember back to the spring semester, we administered a random sample of our employee survey to all job categories here. So from faculty to administrators to exempt professionals to non-exempt staff. There were 60 belief statements as well as 18 benefit satisfaction scores, or benefit satisfaction questions, excuse me, as well as some open-ended questions. And I'll share with you a handful of the open-ended questions because I think they always provide great color commentary, so to speak, on the quantitative data. Definitions will be important, because we'll be talking both about senior leadership scores as well as supervisory scores. So these definitions were provided throughout the survey. The survey was entirely online, and each of these definitions was on each of the pages. So notably, we'll see senior leadership as the chancellor or presidents and the direct reports thereto. And then our supervisors, department chairs refers to the individual to whom you directly report. So if you can plug that away for just a little bit, and those definitions will become important a little bit later in the presentation. So response rates. Overall, this was a solid response rate. You can see overall at 32%. So we sent 600 surveys out to that cross group of organizations or individuals we spoke about, the faculty, administrators, exempt and non-exempt, and we got 194 to respond. 32 is absolutely a respectable response rate, and for other colleges and universities that participated, the response rate was closer to 43%. So we hope we can build on momentum from this survey and get even more folks involved on following surveys. And you can see the least responsive group was the non-exempt staff with a response rate down at 13% of those surveyed. And then the highest response rate came from the administration. That, by the way, is a pretty typical pattern that we see across the country, with administrators being high response rate and the non-exempt being among the lower response rates. We'll be looking at a series of belief statements, and essentially you'll be seeing a lot of what we call positive response rates. So this is the percent of folks who strongly agree or agree, so a lot of percent positives. The score also reflected neutral answers as well as disagrees and strongly disagrees. We'll see a handful of those. But primarily, we'll be focusing on this part of our 5-point Likert scale. Overall, we have some guidelines, kind of like a report card for where the scores fall out. And these are just guidelines. They're tried and true, tested across the country, but they're not necessarily 100% accurate depending on the statement. But in general, when we see scores of 75% or plus, those are exceptional. And I'm proud to report that New Jersey City has many of these statements which we'll focus in on, so there's great opportunities to celebrate key milestones and successes that are already happening. The next rank down would be good to very good, and I've circled this third rank down because this is where your overall results fell. You came in at 63% overall positive, which was going to put you in that fair range. Once we start to see numbers below 55, those are areas we want to pay greater attention to. Again, that's 55% positive. And when we see scores below 45%, and we'll visit a handful of those, that's really an area of what we will call red flag, kind of warrants immediate attention. If you do not already understand what's happening within that area, it's time to roll up your sleeves, drill down, and discover more. Same on the negative side. So there's no way, especially on a college campus that spurs individual thinking and prides itself on individual thought, we're not going to get everybody to agree. So when you see percent negatives that are below that double-digit mark, it's frankly not of great concern. When we get to the double digits, then we start to, it kind of warrants attention. And that, again, is where Jersey City fell, in that 10 to 14%. I think you came out at 12% overall in the negative. So that would put in the monitor range. And then again, once we get above 15%, then there's something of more interest. Any negative scores of 20%. So these are folks who disagree or strongly disagree. Once we get to 20% of your population, again, we consider that an area of red flag, warrants immediate attention. So in a nutshell, if we only had one slide, this would be it. So overall, again, you fell at that 63% positive, which is that fair range that we have monitored from across the country, and you're at that 12%, which is within the monitor range on the negative side. Encouragingly, you fell within 5 points of the honor roll benchmarks on 7 of the 60 statements. So the entire survey is comprised of 60 statements. And on 7 of those statements, you compared favorably with the honor roll, which is the absolute best of the best, the top 10 schools across the country for your size range. So lots of good news to focus on, and we want to figure out what's working well there so that we can replicate those strengths moving forward. So again, some other benchmark comparisons. So here you are at your 63% positive, and here's the honor roll. So these are the world-class best colleges and universities to work for. And then Carnegie class, your Carnegie class is masters, and so this bar happens to be comprised of about 100 different schools in your Carnegie class. This bar is comprised of 10 schools, the top 10 schools in your size category. And this slide pretty well sums it up in that you are consistently within reach, very close to the Carnegie class. So we have 63% here versus 67% for the Carnegie class, whereas the university is consistently 15 points or more off the honor roll benchmark. Now, there are exceptions to that, but as the university grows and wants to become an even better place to work, these really highlight areas that we can focus on in order to get closer to those all-important honor roll benchmarks. So we broke the survey results out by job category. So again, here are the 4 we talked about: administration, faculty, exempt professional, and non-exempt staff. So here's the overall. And again, not an uncommon pattern across the country. where we have the administration showing the overall highest level of satisfaction and engagement, and we have the non-exempts showing a much less favorable experience. What's really notable here is that there's quite a gap, almost a 20-point gap between these two, which is not necessarily what we see across the country. So while the experiences may be somewhat dissimilar, there is more of a gap here than we would typically experience at other institutions. We also broke it out by schools. Now, there are standardized schools from which folks could select, and overall we see a relatively kind of common findings among the schools. Again, these are the overall percent positives by schools, ranging from a high in the business school of 68% to the low of 57% in the liberal arts and sciences area. And we also broke it out by department. So again, compared to your 63% overall positive, we have some super happy folks working in the library. Anybody here from the library? Yay! Congratulations. Sounds like a great place to work. And to be honest with you, that is an exceptional score when we look relative to scores across the country. Typically, library services and IT are among the lowest scoring of the departments, and so it is an even greater accomplishment that the library service is doing so well here. And then here we have those in public safety and law enforcement, clearly significantly below their peers. Where we have a 34% difference here. And that's where we really focus on, is where do we see the greatest differences, the greatest gaps, so that we can learn more about keys to the culture. I mentioned previously we have 60 belief statements, and those are broken down into 15 dimensions or themes. So these are areas or influences of a workplace that are going to have an impact on your day-to-day experience. And it's things that you might expect. Obviously, we're going to have comp and benefits, career development, policies, resources, shared governance is very important and very much a hot topic in higher education these days. Confidence in senior leadership, communication is always a big issue. In fact, we always say in terms of workplace quality, in real estate, the mantra is location, location, location. Well, in workplace quality, the mantra is communication, communication, communication. So these are the 15 different dimensions. Now, I took all the dimensions and I looked at what were the 4 lowest scoring of the 15, the 4 lowest scoring being faculty and staff relations, teaching environment, communication, and senior leaders. Now, senior leaders, interestingly, was tied for the bottom 4. There were 2 other, communication and collaboration, which were right at that 59% as well. Then here's kind of your overall score again at 63, and then here are the 4 highest scoring dimensions. So professional development at 69, and then look at job satisfaction and pride, very strong scores, 61, and if you'll remember at the very beginning, what we said were stellar or excellent scores were at 75, so tremendous source of pride for folks who work here. As well as current comps, benefits, and in particular work-life balance was the highest scoring single dimension. So we're going to start through, there are about 8 themes that I collated, summarized from the larger deck, and the first has to do with pride, job satisfaction and pride. So in general, folks here at NJCU have enormous pride, particularly given your mission and your success working with diverse first-generation college students. And so a couple job fit here, and anything where you see is highlighted in green, you will note is, neck and neck with the honor roll. So again, here are the top 10 colleges across the country in your size category, and you are neck and neck in job contribution, given responsibility and freedom to do my job, as well as I am proud to be part of this institution. So these are strengths, kind of foundation blocks upon which we can build future improvement. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful capsule of many of the comments we wrote about how much pride and loyalty folks have here to the institution. Diversity, as we'll see, came up as a significant theme, another area of pride, and how much the university contributes to the surrounding community. I'll give you a second to take a look at that quote, but obviously, and there were many, many more like them. So very powerful message from the community. Another strength here is diversity. So the institution places emphasis on having diverse faculty, admin, and staff. And here again, you're right in line with the best of the best, that honor roll, with the institution has clear and effective procedures for dealing with discrimination. And then here's another, the designation as a Hispanic serving institution, large minority population. And then this was interesting. According to a 2000 survey by the Modern Languages Department, there are about 55 different languages spoken here on campus, which is certainly a distinguishing feature. And now here we had mixed reviews. So comp and benefits, the overall scores you'll see reflected positively, and there was a definite disagreement within and among the non-exempt staff. And I think what's important here to note is, again, in one instance is you're actually above the best, the greatest colleges in the country. And so very, very generous comp and benefits packages currently, except, again, as felt by non-exempt staff. Concerns. So there were, folks were very candid in expressing their concerns about senior leaders, both in terms of capability as well as credibility. And so here are a couple of the key senior leader statements. And remember that 55 was an area below which we're really going to be concerned. So we have one statement here at 53, senior leader provides clear direction for the institution's future. And we compare that with with a 22-point difference from the honor roll, but notably, look, it is still relatively very close to the Carnegie class. So remember that pattern I mentioned at the very beginning, 15+ difference off the honor roll schools, but actually tracking pretty closely with the Carnegie class. We see that again here. And then the next lowest score on the chart is the facilities, and this has to ties into the institution. There's a sense that the institution is well run, and we'll see that come up again regarding resources. So we have communicates openly, I believe what I'm told about senior leadership, and again, very consistently, about 20 points off honor roll, but tracking very close to the Carnegie classification. So senior, some comments, very candid comments about senior leadership, and a number of folks went out of their way to point out that many of their opinions at this time were about previous administration, and this one does so as well. But using words such as political, not professional, disillusioning, insular culture. Most all departments are governed by voting blocks. And there's very little planning done. So this obviously I selected this quote because there's a lot of data packed into that one. And uniformly, there were many comments about the optimism for the future, especially with the arrival of the new president. Folks have already sensed change and change in the right direction. And I hope that today's town hall meetings can be used as further evidence of a kind of a different culture, a different level of transparency and attempt at communication. Lack of resources. So, I am provided the resources I need to be effective in my job. This is a uniform opinion throughout higher education. Everyone is trying to do much, much more with much, much less. So resources are down. We have adequate faculty and staff to achieve our goals. So a 37, here we have some of those shocking scores, right, below 45%. But again, compare. That's why the benchmarks are so important. Even the best of the best are down below that 55 magic, and here your Carnegie class peers are at 40. Orientation program, this is probably some low-hanging fruit in that it is a real low scorer, even when you compare it to the Carnegie class. Silos was another area where folks felt that there was not good support, cross-functional, cross-silo, and we see that in terms of regular communication among faculty, administration, and staff. And then this last statement, which I blew up because it was so informing, but here's the survey statement, number 58. There's a sense that we're all on the same team in this organization, and these are percent positives again. So we've got 58% positive for the administrators and way down here for everybody else, faculty, exempt, as well as non-exempt. Another regarding fairness and accountability, especially as it relates to the performance management system. So here we have promotions are based on person's ability. This is something we need to take a look at. Not only is it below that 55, it's below the 45, and it's significantly off even the Carnegie. So when we see the disparate scores between the Carnegie and Jersey City, that's really an area for opportunity. Similarly here, issues of low performance are addressed. Low by our grading scale, low by comparison to Carnegie's. Varying caliber and training of supervisors. So supervisors play such a key role, especially in an environment of change management. And this institution is very much engaged in change management right now. And the supervisors, they are the ones that are going to be either great ambassadors for the senior leaders' message and their goals or not. And we feel that additional training and consistency among supervisors would really help equip them to be the great ambassadors for the change that lays ahead. And then just kind of in summary, we take about a half a dozen or so what we call barometer statements, which are, if you take the pulse of the institution, we would use these 7 statements. And not surprisingly, they mirror the kind of the themes we were talking about. So here we have senior leaders, and this is in yellow for those who may not be able to, they may not be that clear from the back. Then we have our institution is well run. And again, here's another significance from the Carnegie class, institution well run, which clearly ties into the senior leader statements. And then we're all in the sense in the same team. So this is kind of some of the areas of concern that we would really hope to focus on. And then finally, we have the barometer statements where there's really great news. So in the Pride, you are right in neck and neck with the honor roll. And this is also very encouraging. This institution's culture is special. It's not just like everywhere else. And all things considered, this is a great place to work. So these are good, and as we look at the Carnegie, there's still room for improvement. But the great news is that you really have what I call kind of seesaw scores, right? Some are really, really up, and some are really low, and there's a lot right in the middle, so you can see kind of that saw tooth. And the great news with scores like these is that we have other institutions with whom we work with that are very, very lopsided and have extremely low scores, and they don't have any of these, especially the Pride, to build upon. And so we think with some additional planning, which we're just going to learn about, is already in place, but most importantly, the senior leadership's team commitment to hearing the survey data, sharing the survey data in all transparency. I hope you'll agree this has been a pretty transparent sharing of data, and taking action to help improve the things that they can. Budget cuts being what they are, there's absolutely no way in the world the institution could tackle everything that was mentioned in the survey, right? So it really is going to be about prioritizing those key initiatives that the school wants to focus on, and then chipping away at that bit by bit, and then communicating the results back and forth. But again, I commend senior leaders. These town halls are an excellent first stepping stone. So now we're going to start with some question and answer. So Hunt had circulated in advance to see if anybody had any questions that they wanted to submit. So we're going to start with the previously circulated questions, and then we're going to open it up for a few minutes and see if anybody has any questions here today.
Thanks, Eileen. Yeah, actually, in keeping with the issue of transparency, we did solicit questions from employees, and we did receive 11 questions, and we're going to go right through the questions and provide an explanation and response to some of the issues that were brought up. And I'm going to go through and read the questions, and there's a couple of them here that relate specifically to human resources, and I'll try to provide what I know is going on now currently. The first question that we had was, in the past there was a council of managers that addressed professional development. Are there plans to bring this program back or develop a similar program that addresses leadership and professional development for managers? And I think we are planning of creating some type of regular meeting and get-together for an administrative group, and one that would really pull multiple departments together and cover and communicate key issues that we have at any one point in time. Perhaps talk about projects that are underway. Just another forum to really communicate and interact. It'll be another mechanism to really break down those silos that was one of the issues that was brought up in the survey. So that's one question. Another one that relates primarily to human resources, but covers a broad gamut of issues. And this is a little bit long, but I'll go through it. Morale is down here at the university due to many issues, but several in particular are of concern. One is that there isn't any ramifications when a faculty member is known to harass. Another is that we see promotions based on who knows whom, not on merit. Also, some workers do the minimum and others are left to pick up the slack. We see this continually in housekeeping, especially with bickering between day and night shifts and what supervisor doesn't do their job. We don't see hiring done in lower paid jobs, claiming there isn't the funding, and then we see highly paid administrators being hired. I hear faculty members berating their secretaries and nothing is done. We see faculty being promoted with very little responsibility for their positions, and deserving faculty being overlooked. Often chairs are charged with specific duties, and the ones who don't do their part get away with it and are paid to do so. We all too often hear of no-show faculty being paid. And I think we are doing some things, and we plan to do more to respond to this multitude of issues that's brought up in that particular question. We're planning to have more training for faculty and staff, and we really want to emphasize that we need to work towards a much more collegial way of working together and an approach in a climate that's really imbued here that just promotes fairness. Breaking down the silos is really going to be a priority, and you'll hear more and more about that in future months. Clear communication. We've already taken some steps on better communication. We have a newsletter that's just been started up. These town halls, as Eileen mentioned, are a good example of our efforts to really ramp up communications that apparently are a pretty strong need. And we're trying to be more transparent, and we're really going to push the issue of respect and promoting appreciation for work that's done here, because there's a lot of good work that's done here. And it's seen, but we're just not responding and recognizing employees sufficiently. And we've got a plan for a reward and recognition program that you'll hear more about in the next several months. And we're really going to promote more of a walk-around style. You know, obviously, you know, we can't walk around every day, every minute, but just interacting, I think promotes that communication. And I think you'll see, and you've seen, I think already, Sue has that style, and that style will be pushed, you know, in the organization. Performance systems. We introduced a new performance system actually before I started here for classified staff, the PARS program. That's in its infancy, but progressing. We're going to be looking at a new performance management system for management in addition to the reappointment process. You know, that'll be a fairly significant change. So that's one response. Now let's get into some other questions here. Another one. Some high-profile administrative hires have recently been made. Another one has just been announced, senior VP and provost, making 5 VPs. How does the administration plan to cover these costs while at the same time funding for 27 or 28 current new searches? A 2% increase in enrollment seems to be an unrealistic answer. By the way, I don't expect this question to be chosen for the meetings, but we chose it. And I'm going to defer on this one and see if we can get some other responses from a couple of other senior leaders.
Yeah, so what we did last year when I got here was kind of look around and say, well, what are some things we can do to save some money? And we were able to readjust some of the things that we did in terms of equipment, and I think looking at some of the things that we could be more efficient with. So we did make some savings last year. Now, we also know that in order for us to make some of the academic departments to be more well-rounded, you're going to have more people in them. And I'll give you a very simple example. Our philosophy department has 1 person in it. 1. Now, there's at least 2 kinds of philosophy out there. You can be a continental philosopher, you can be an analytical. I don't think this woman is that schizophrenic. She might be, I don't know. My past boss had training in both. So the point I'm making, we have a lot of departments that are part of really growing programs here at the institution, and yet I don't have the kind of faculty here to meet all those needs. So we're working on that. Political science department, the economics department. There's just a lot of departments that need some help. To do that, you need to grow. And we went kind of through this yesterday. We did a chairs retreat with all the department chairs, all 39 of them, and we talked about what does it mean to grow. Next year, we need to have 200 more people sitting in the seats. Now, how in the world are we going to do that? We're not going to ask Jose to go out and get 200 more people, because that's not his job. But we are going to work together to get 200 more people sitting in. I would love to start another athletic team. And I've already talked with Alice about discussing that. Now we have to start first with, what do you call it? You have to start with a club team. But that's another way. If you have an athletic team, you already have it, and you have to have 15 people on the team. You'll know every year there's 15 students at this institution who, by the way, have somebody pestering them every day. Have you done your homework? You know, are you coming to practice? It's a great way to make sure your students get graduated. So it's another way to do it. We have something called National Student Exchange. It's an exchange program where students from around the country can come here for a year or for a semester, live in our residence halls, pay that rent, which is great, and go to our classes. I'd like to get about 30 of them. We applied for it last year, got permission, and even next spring we have 2 or 3 coming, even though they weren't supposed to. I mean, we weren't able to get in line for it. But being in the metro New York area is very popular, so you'll find people from Hawaii, from Utah to come. So you could get 20 or 30 of those. I met this week with the gentleman who's in charge of the ROTC program at Seton Hall. He has been asked, he right now reaches out to 23 schools, and he's been asked by the Army, no, it is Army, to cut back the number of schools. We don't have any right now that we send over there. He said, you are an important school to us. We have a gentleman whose mother taught here, David Chu, who was the person in charge of human resources for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Yeah, pretty impressive job. Every time I go to Washington, D.C., he meets with me. And he says, it is really important to the Army that we have a diverse pool of officers. you can offer that. So this particular gentleman is very committed to recruiting students for us and helping Jose to go get some students, ROTC students. Again, the kind of students you know will come and stay. So that's another population of students. Then we are working on the retention. Retention, you can either add the number of students in your classes by either bringing a lot of new ones in and then letting them out the door, or keeping them here. It's the old adage, it takes more energy and money, which it does, to recruit a student than just to keep them. Every fall, from freshman to sophomore, of the 100 students that come in, about 35 of them leave us. Yeah. So if we could just keep 30 or 40 more of those students. And then Bill Bazier's done a great job of adding to the number of graduate students. He's grown it, I think, about 100. Do I have the number right? 100. He's grown it a lot. This past year, I was almost 100 because they helped to make up our undergraduate. So he's going to bring in 4 more students. Then we're going to ask Jose to do the difference. So that's how I think we can get the 200. Every 100 students you bring in here brings us $1 million. It's a lot of money. So the other reason we need to grow, it increases our revenue. By the way, how many of you know Montclair State? Yes? You know what its reputation is in the state, right? Okay, it's grown in the past 3 years in reputation. And the way you grow your reputation is you do a couple of things. You have to grow every year about 2%. And she has. If you look at her growth chart, it looks like this. Now, she can't do that forever because eventually you just run out of space and it doesn't become that efficient. But it's a great thing to do for about 5 years. So you grow for a number of years, and then there's other things you do bring revenue, which we're working on. So that's the solution for now for solving that problem. And as I said yesterday to the chairs, the idea of getting 200 more people sitting in those seats next fall is all of our problem. So, and our solution. So that's a little bit of the answer to that one. I want to go back to the first question that was asked when someone talked about the idea of bringing a similar program. You had the Council of Managers, and you talked about professional development. I get to sign off on people's travel and going to conferences, and I really do see that a number of you get to go to conferences, and that is actually a good thing. My dream for people, I said this once in a couple of jobs ago, and they looked at me like, what? My dream is that 5 years from now, somebody's recruiting you to go work for them. If that's true, then I've done my job. I've grown you as a human being. When I used to teach, I wanted to mentor my students. And then when I became a chair, I wanted to mentor my faculty. I got about 5,000 people here to mentor. So it's a lot. So I'd like to see us work on doing professional development. But here's the piece I want to happen. If you go to a conference, and an example is if we sent a faculty member to a Reacting to the Past conference, it's a pedagogy. I would then want to make sure that we put the resources in place next fall so that they could do it. Because going to the conference and not doing anything with it doesn't really help you. So whether you're in the registrar's office, whether you're in the development office, whether you're in communications, there's ways that you can grow as a professional. And I want you to think about that. And going to the conferences is not a lot of money to expend if what comes back is the opportunity to build on that and do something kind of cool with it. So I'm hoping that we will continue to work on that. One more thing, and then I'll give it up. One of the reasons I think the survey showed that there was concern about promotions, and that was consistent with my findings as I went around the institution last year. And so one of the first things I asked Hunt to do when he got here is, can you help me, help put together a performance, what's it called, performance planning process. Thank you. He doesn't like the word evaluation, and I agree. Performance planning, because then you sit down with your boss at the end of the year, talk about what you've gotten done, what you want to get done, and move from there. So that's something we're going to work on. But the other piece I sort of am committed to doing, which is an observation, is working on training for managers, whether it's department chairs or whether it's managers, because we need to be training you for your next job. And to do that, you got to be able to do your job well as a manager. So I answered more than I was supposed to. Sorry.
Great, thanks. We have really what I'd characterize as some content experts here today. So I'm going to go on and read another question and then see if we can get one of our content experts from the floor to help out here a little bit. Next question here was, can management do anything about coworkers or supervisors who are not breaking any rules but are rude, demeaning, and disrespectful towards other employees? I did mention before that we're really going to be promoting a different culture here. But there are some other things that we can do too, and I'm going to defer to Al to see if he can help us, just with some ideas of how to respond to that question.
Well, thank you very much for that, Hunt. I think the easiest and probably the one that I wouldn't necessarily want to encourage is greater enforcement of existing rules and procedures. What I'd like to see, though, is probably more general acceptance among employees and managers and supervisors that when we come to work, we should expect that it's a place where people should expect to be able to work with respect and dignity for everyone. It's not really about what your title is or what your job is. We're all here for one purpose, and that's basically to have a great institution, to provide services, higher education services to our students. And we should be able to do that in a way that respects the contributions of all of us. I think that some of this may have to do with development of supervisors and managers, so they can also mentor and develop the employees that work for them. But we need to spend some time with that, I think, and it's part of the job. So I think that we should do that, and I think human resources will be working in that direction.
Thanks, Al. We've got another couple here that I'm going to try to get through on the questions that were submitted. The next one here, is I'm trying to catch some people while they're here. So let's just see if we can do that. Not catch them, but include them include them in the process. And this is the question. We were told some time ago that even as the university is seeking to build its enrollment, there are no plans to increase staffing in offices that serve students. How are employees in bursar, financial aid, admissions, and registrar expected to handle the additional workload? I had some ideas on that, and I was thinking that we're really pushing on technology. We're going to be doing more of that. We're looking at some better synergies with a new provost portfolio, working closely with student affairs, and we're not precluding the possibility that with real enrollment growth we can't look at some staff expansion as well, but did want to highlight too that my understanding is that the ratios that existed here of staff to students are really not a whole lot different currently than they were at some of the heights of student population here back in 2005, 2006. So need to reference that and think about that as well too. But didn't know whether Lynn might have some other thoughts on that. I noticed she's here, our Dean of Students and Student Affairs. Did you want to say a couple of things, Lynn?
About why my departments don't have full staffs, okay. Well, first of all, I think that they work very well with the staffs that they have. I know that they all need additional help, we all do, but we're trying to I guess follow our mission and move forward. I don't, that's a really difficult question to answer. I would just hope that eventually we are able to get additional staff to work for each department. And specifically, I guess, we're also trying to do some cross-training with staff so that we can help each other and work as a team. So for now, that's about all that I can add to that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Len.
I don't need a microphone, actually.
Sure, Lamont.
One of the ways that we, oh, we did? Yeah. Sorry. I think one of the, and Lynn, you touched on it, one of the ways that we could approach it is to be a little more creative in the way that we staff some of our offices. For instance, the admissions office doesn't necessarily need admissions counselors to do recruiting. And that's primarily the goal of that office, is to recruit new students. So that's when we can engage the faculty. I know for instance, Dr. Bozeman, I know that she recruits in her community to NJCU, and most of us, Novin, recruit to the institution as well. So looking at more creative ways to staff offices or utilize staffing is one of the approaches that we could take as well. We also look to increase efficiencies in some of those offices through the utilization of technology, for instance, and staffing of graduate assistants, student assistants. So, the way that we approach that, we're all overworked, I think, for the most part. And that's just the nature, as our presenter mentioned, one of the concerns and the lack of resources in higher education. So one of the approaches is definitely to be more creative and to utilize every facet that we have here at the institution. We have multiple resources when we look internally. So hopefully we'll see more of that synergy as we move forward.
Great, thanks. Just so you know, we are going to be conducting another employee opinion attitude survey for faculty. It's very specific, and we're going to get more information about that. You'll be out pretty soon announcing that survey. It'll cover just faculty, and we do have a plan to look at redoing this survey, but it'll probably be another 2 years before we get back to it. And we're using this really as a baseline. But I wanted to just touch on one of the questions that relates to academic affairs here, and I'll read the question again. So many of our students arrive underprepared, and figure out how to do as little work as possible to get by. They choose instructors who assign little written work and give multiple choice quizzes. They leave NJCU as poor readers and writers. When faculty teach 4 courses, they can barely keep up with grading and responding to student work. They certainly cannot assign and read much written work if they teach more than 4 courses. Yet faculty are allowed to teach overload, and they pass along the students who, as a result, still read and write inadequately. The rest of us then have to work with students who have not been asked to write anything since their English comp courses. I am not blaming the English department. This is a university-wide problem. What does the administration plan to do to reduce course loads and to cut the overload? I'm going to I'll read the response that was put together here, and if anyone else would like to add to it, perhaps Sue or perhaps Deb, who's here now, might have some ideas on it. This is what Joe and Joe Bruno had helped put together. Guidance for the award of overload in general. Overload, as with all assignments, teaching and non-teaching, should be assigned in the best interest of furthering the university's mission to provide students with an excellent education. The guidelines are intended to assist deans to exercise their academic judgment in an equitable, consistent, and university-wide manner, ensuring fair compensation for faculty and the best of academic services for students. Deans, with the approval of the Vice President, can, in his or her discretion, to allow academic assignments made in excess of the guidelines established when it is appropriate to do so in his or her academic judgment. The general guideline is that no more than 6 credits overload is assigned based on sound academic practice for best serving our students, and that 18 credits must be carefully reviewed to be in the best interest of student class size, sections, contact hours, etc. In general, no more than 15 of 18 should consist of teaching credits for any individual faculty member. Deans, with the approval of the VP, may in their academic judgment or management prerogative award more than 6, as in the case of emergency or academic need. In the event of research release time as awarded through SBR process or other proposals, the faculty load consists of 3 to 6 credits release time for research for a total maximum of 12 credit loads. So in answer to the question, that has been considered, and there are some things in place that are going to be moving forward to respond to it.
So this year we put in the budget $50,000 more for faculty to apply for research. And so that's a good thing because there were faculty, we observed there are faculty, they're writing books, they're doing research that really, I guess they do it in the summer because they're very busy. The other thing that didn't get a chance to do yesterday in the Senate meeting because we were so busy doing the Gen Ed, the very last slide that it was in my presentation were 3 charges to the Senate. And the first charge is to ask them to put together a group to look at 2 things, and it's quantitative reasoning across the curriculum and writing and speaking across the curriculum. And I had a conversation with Hillary, who said, you know, she has just been very passionate about it. She also recognizes that it is not just the English department that needs to be able to make sure that everybody writes, that we all need to be doing that. So anyway, the Senate has the charge. As well as 2 others that have to do with academic integrity and then looking at assessment program review. So I was excited that the faculty are interested in helping to implement some of this. The thought is that this comes with a new Gen Ed, but I think probably we just need to keep pushing on this because we know that writing is so important. This fall, they always write articles about what does a degree from a college mean. Every one of them talked about the fact that the workforce today is looking for the people that can write, speak, and think critically, working in teams. So it's really an important skill.
I'm going to, in looking at our time frame and trying to keep to a reasonable schedule here, I'm going to cover one more question here and response. And find the one here that we missed. What is NJCU planning to do to develop specific awareness in our market of the university's many excellent educational programs? Our low profile hurts our enrollment and devalues the value of our students' degrees as they search for employment in a very challenging job market. And again, we have some very expert senior management representatives here that are going to help us with some answers.
Thank you, Hun. I just wanted to tell you I feel very much more confident and relaxed seeing the moderator of our discussion this morning wearing a multicolored tie with hearts all over it. I feel we're in very good hands. So anyway, in regard to this question, I think it's important to note that the quality and the scope of NJCU's educational programs are very much integrated in all the advertising and marketing that we do. Whether we're talking about the placements that we make in the print media or in social media or on our web or in our public relations placements in newspapers, that we try to amplify the university's strengths, which we think rest in the 41 undergraduate programs and the 29 graduate programs that we have, and the tremendous faculty that produce those programs. I think that there's certainly a lot of competition out there, that we're trying to differentiate the university from our competition. It is a process that takes a matter of years in terms of consistent branding, and we hope to continue to gain momentum to help create a reputation and awareness of the university that it deserves. Michael, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Sure. So I started here about 3 years ago, and actually 3 years ago in September, so, and started working with Bill on our advertising and marketing. And as Bill said, a lot of our advertising has been very focused on the faculty and the programs that we have, but it's more generalized because our focus is to get folks here for the open house events where they can actually meet the faculty and they can see what the programs are. A lot of students, when they're coming in, they're coming in as undeclared, and I think that we would rather have them meet with folks and see what we offer here. We do brand-specific advertising for different programs, but they're based on enrollment goals. For example, we have some advertising that we do for the MBA program. There's 3 open houses coming up through the fall here, and we advertise those events so that folks can show up to those. We also have ads that go into specific publications for nursing when the opportunities arise. So there's a lot of that goes on. You may not see it because it's very targeted, but it all supports, as Bill said, the overall brand of the university. So I think that's probably about good, right?
One other thing, sorry, that I know. I know that Tamara has as a project this fall, yes? She's taking all the faculty and taking their CVs and putting them in a database. And why that is so absolutely incredibly important is the following. If somebody calls us up from the press or we get a lead that they're wanting to know who here knows how to work with the mud under the water in the Hudson River, we have a faculty member who does that, and we can call them and say, this is this, and we can make a very timely response. I've learned that just from past experience. If a newspaper or a TV program, if they get your name once, they're going to call you back again. If you never do research in that area again, they still assume you're the expert because it's easy for you to get a hold of. So our faculty are accessible. Get the database. We're good to go. So any faculty member here, please send her your CV.
Thanks, Sue. There were a couple of items in the first question that you kicked off with that Sue answered, that were financially related. I didn't know whether Aaron, did you have anything you wanted to add to any of that?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the community for being patient with us during this extraordinary hard budget year. But as the moderator said, resources are declining nationally, and NJCU is still one of the most affordable institutions, and I think that's been our financial strategy. But as Bill and the other moderators said, there has to be something more than just affordability to go with our financial strategy. And certainly tuition increase will buttress our already meager resources, but I think now we have to look at some growth because just raising tuition is not going to be the solution.
Thanks. As I said at the outset, we are going to open up for questions from the floor, so do we have any? Will?
I would like to ask something to the consultants, if that's okay. When the results of the survey first came out, I noticed there were no universities or institutions from New Jersey, actually only one from New York and New Jersey. And I mean, I'm making an inference here saying maybe it's a psychological or sociological issue, based on the area. So in my opinion, I think it might help to some degree to see how NJCU compares to our sister institutions or even to the state, as opposed to, such a skewed, sample in the honor roll, which has no variance, and of course to the Carnegie classification, which is just 100 universities to which perhaps we don't relate as much. So is there a way of actually getting those numbers, of seeing how we compare against Kane or Rutgers Newark, as opposed to, all these other universities?
Just for the video, not that I've ever been accused of being quiet. Yes is the answer. So we have, through this program, surveyed over 800 colleges and universities, many of whom are in this particular area. So to the extent that anyone is interested in getting a custom aspirational peer benchmark, as long as we have 5 institutions within our database, that's something we can accommodate.
But we're going to have to talk a lot to Aaron to...
Right. But it costs money, Aaron. Touche.
More questions? Floor is yours.
So, hi. Do we need to introduce ourselves? All right. Sarah Harnett, Campus Life. Not for nothing, but November 8th, I'll be here 25 years.
Congratulations.
The students are wonderful. If you really are worried about how people act towards each other, we used to have great role models on this campus, from the groundskeepers through housekeeping and on and on and on, who said good morning and asked each other how they were, and the students how they were. So it's really, we don't have to spend money, we just have to behave the way our parents taught us. But my question is, and I can't tell because that was way back on slide 1 and now we're on slide 30, but it seemed like the people who earn the most amount of money and have the most autonomy on how they spend their day happen to be happiest at work. Was that what I saw?
So in NJCU's results, yes, the administrators did tend to be happier, and that is not a uniform result across the country, but it is a tendency for the administrators to be more plugged in than, say, some of the non-exempt staff. What I think is notable here, as I said on that slide, was the disparity between those two groups. So while a difference may be expected, I believe there was almost a 20-point difference here. So that's a real area of concern.
And I'm just thinking too, looking at the room here, it appears that we probably have a fairly significantly large number of administrators here right now. And I'm really hoping that we'll get some results fed back to others. So I really encourage you to encourage others, outside of your immediate peer group to get to one of these meetings this afternoon at 2 or tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
And we're also being videotaped, so presumably there will be internet access as well?
On the internet as well, when we're finished with the whole process the next 2 days.
Great. So anybody who's not able to make it here, that's one of the reasons we're being so vigilant about mic use. But so then they can view it anytime, anywhere. And I think that was a great idea to videotape so that it's more accessible.
More questions? Got to be one more. No?
Excellent. Well, thanks everybody very much coming.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.